Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
In the past a journalist, and in the future an editor, will our today's hero's wife fall for such a man? Today's story has a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. After the divorce, I waited about a year before I called Winslow Hubble. Things had calmed down and the memories had faded, at least for him. For me, they were still fresh, still sensitive. They were still strong enough to push me forward as I planned and plotted the second half of my revenge. The first was the divorce itself. It went by pretty quickly. Neither Ashley nor I had enough money to make it interesting to the lawyers. When the facts of the breakup came to light, her parents were not interested in supporting Ash's plans to tie me up in court. As for the division of property, we didn't have much. We rented a house and earned about the same amount, so everything went pretty smoothly. Despite Ash's best efforts, she didn't want to break up, but I did. It took her quite a long time to understand that she was no longer steering the ship of our relationship. I tried to gently convince her, but when that didn't work, I threatened to send a video of her cheating to everyone in her address book. She deflated like a punctured balloon. And now, less than a year after Ashley carried out her extramarital affairs in her marital bed, we have separate apartments, separate bank accounts, and completely different lives. We've always had a variety of friends. We tried to merge them for a while, but her work buddies were part of the Brooks Brothers financial district crowd, and mine were more of the used to be a starving writer, now I'm a corporate salesman at Doc Martin's tribe. As we eventually learned, a bloodthirsty jackal and a mischievous otter do not get along well together. I thought about punishing Ashley for her infidelity, but in the end, I decided that divorce was sufficient retribution. In just a few nights of disgusting intim, she had deprived herself of a wonderful marriage, a nice apartment she couldn't afford on her own, and a promotion at her job. She worked for the investment firm Pierce, Bateman, Potter, Gordon, and McDuck, known as Pierce & Bateman, which prided itself on having a stable married workforce. Unfortunately, Ash no longer fits into this category. She could still work her way up, but it would take longer and be a more difficult task. Sometimes I wondered which loss hit her harder, our nice place on the Upper West Side, our marriage, or her express route to the corner office. But actually, I think I already know. Ash received Winslow in the divorce. I suppose she would have preferred him to go with me, but she broke the egg, and I had no problem leaving her to clean up the mess. Winslow Hubble, you see, was my wife's lover. No, forget it, lover is not the right word. Everything that happened between Winslow and Ashley had nothing to do with love or even affection. He wasn't her boyfriend either. I haven't been keeping tabs on my ex-wife since we broke up. In fact, I've done everything I can to cut myself out of her life completely, but I'd bet my last penny that she hasn't given him any time since I sent him the video of them together. If I had to call Winslow something, I would call him the guy whose manhood unlocked my marriage. He was neither the instigator nor the beneficiary, at least not after the few evenings he spent in my bed. Winslow was a key, a tool whose purpose was to be used and then discarded. Winslow's phone buzzed twice before he answered. The double bell was a high school trick that he carried through college to his job at Pierce & Bateman: never look impatient, never look desperate, never pick up the phone on the first ring. If you know this trick, it just looks pathetic. The same can be said about Winslow. His voice, aristocratic, arrogant, Winslow Hubble speaking. Hello, Winslow, this is Charles Walker. Chuck Walker. A name from the past. I heard a smirk in his voice. His leather seat creaked as he leaned back. What do you need, Chuck? Do you have money that you want to invest? Winslow probably knows that my little nest egg is less than a rounding error for most of Pierce & Bateman's clients. No. I'm fine now, Vinny. I smiled, knowing the nickname would make him flinch. I just thought it was high time you and I talked. Winslow snorted. Well, I can't imagine what we can talk about, Chuck. We don't move in the same circles anymore. He allowed himself a small, rich laugh, or in fact, you don't move in those circles at all. I can't even imagine why I should want to have a drink with you. Well, Winnie, it's like this. You still have your wife, and I still have the video. I guess it's time for me to provide some information about my ex-wife and me. I'm Charles Chuck Walker, a former journalist who now makes money editing fluffy articles about the charity work of Polylevel, a very large and well-known corporation. It's not the most rewarding job, but it pays well, the people are nice, and it helps ensure I have something better than cat food and a short-term heroin addiction when I retire. As for Ashley, she is an investment banker working in the wilds of Wall Street. In contrast to the tainted idealism that adds a bit of hypocritical flair to my office, Pearson Bateman holds to the firm belief that money creates its own morality. Simply put, if it's profitable, it's good. Despite our completely different professions, Ash and I were well suited to each other. We were both 30, old enough to think seriously about children but young enough not to think about them too seriously. I am 5 feet 5 inches, green-eyed, brown-haired, and in good shape, which I maintain by going to the gym 3 times a week and walking 5 to 10 miles a day. Ash is 5 feet 8 inches with dark brown hair, piercing blue eyes, and a body that haunted my dreams both before and after we got married. We met at the We Were Promised Jetpacks concert in Brooklyn, where she spilled beer on my third best-selling t-shirt, and I got her phone number. I talked to her a lot that evening. We skipped the opening performance of the Scottish reggae band and sipped beer in a small smoking area outside. I'd been around the New York dating scene long enough to know that she was something special, beautiful and brilliant with a bubbly sense of humor and a direct, straightforward, honest demeanor that constantly caught me off guard. I later learned that she was the youngest of 5 children and had 4 older brothers who shared her outspoken honesty and mischief. The following weekend, we agreed to go on a date to a Muppet exhibit at the Museum of the Moving Image, and I found that the humor and intelligence I noted during our first meeting persisted even after my beer glasses disappeared. For that matter, once I was sober enough, I seemed even more impressed to recognize the nuances of her subtle banter. 6 months later, she had my ring. A year later, we got married. This was 4 years ago. Staying married in a big city isn't easy, and we both worked hard at it. I knew that Ash sometimes stayed late at the office, and she knew that I sometimes had to struggle to meet a deadline or finish one of the freelance articles I wrote on the side. We tried to coordinate subway rides and organize dinners, but some days we only saw each other for a few minutes in the morning and an hour or 2 in the evening. Nevertheless, we tried to keep the weekends free, corresponded by email to keep each other updated on events, and never forgot important dates or anniversaries, even the silly little ones like Spilled Beer Day and First Real Date Day. I learned that Ash is a chameleon. In a museum, she is intelligent and erudite without being arrogant. Hiking through the Adirondack Mountains, she is rough and competitive, oblivious to the scrapes and bruises she gets chasing me down the trail. After a few cocktails, she became playful and silly, eager to join in my F. Scott Fitzgerald fantasies of being young and wealthy in New York. We jumped into several fountains and had a wild night behind some trees in Central Park. Don't believe the hype, the hottest thing about it was the fear of getting caught. While dating, living together, getting married, and building a life, she was discovering new sides of herself, cleverness in her humor, vulnerability in her caring. It was as if she was making gifts out of these parts, offering them to me when I least expected it. At work, Ash the chameleon let her predatory side out. I was able to catch her hint every Thursday night at Pierce and Bateman's weekly happy hour. The firm has a permanent lease on a back room at 3 Olives, a prim and stylish establishment in the financial district with enough burgundy leather armchairs, hunting prints, and dowdy British cuisine to embitter even the most dedicated Anglophile. Although weekly attendance was not officially required, failure to show up, especially with a spouse in tow, was an admission that you didn't care about advancing your career. So every Thursday night, I made small talk with Ashley's money warrior colleagues, absorbed gossip from her office, and watched her work the crowd. Most of Ashley's coworkers are smug ex-students, and many of their spouses are the kind of lacquered blondes who studied art or early childhood education in college and were looking for husbands with serious earning potential. I tried to blend in, but you can talk only so much about rooftop bars and Jimmy Choo shoes before you just want to take a bullet. Luckily, Martha, call me Marty, Hubble came to my rescue. In appearance, Winslow Hubble's better half looked like another starved, bleached, and varnished wife of a Pearson Bateman employee. However, one evening my assumptions about her were dashed when Abby Van Vorten talked about her husband's new hobby of curling, a Canadian game in which you push granite discs across an ice-covered surface. So let's figure it out, Martha muttered. She boasted that her New England blue blood husband was spending a small fortune to learn a game played by redneck Canadians. I looked and saw a smirk playing on her face. Martha, I realized, had uttered her version of a colloquial Maria, a salvo designed to find out whether I was a sympathizer or just another person in the pod. Redneck or Rockefeller, inbreeding seems to be widespread, I muttered in response. However, this is a dangerous game. It's hard to play polo with your eyes constantly squinted. We were going to the races. Marty, I learned, was a woman in the Martha Stewart mold, from her driving ambition to her dry Mojave sense of humor. Like the great Mrs. Stewart, Martha Hubble, née Petsky, began life from humble beginnings, working her way from a working-class Pittsburgh neighborhood to a well-established college and eventually to a promising marriage to a man whose Anglo-Saxon surname is slightly more prestigious than her Polish-Lithuanian one. She had a job at a well-known publishing house where she had already made a name for herself, but it was generally assumed that it was only a matter of time before she quit and started releasing little Hubbles. At Pearson Bateman's never-ending happy hours, Marty and I would usually find each other in a corner somewhere, exchanging witty comments and passing the time while our spouses worked the crowd. They went their separate ways. Ashley, still paying off her student loans, spent most of her time sipping soda and using her brains and integrity to hook up with guys in very nice suits. Meanwhile, Winslow, who probably celebrated most of his childhood birthdays at the yacht club or the 19 Club, passed the time drinking gin and tonics and telling dirty jokes to his former fraternity mates. It was hard not to notice the difference in class. Ash was trying to fight her way into the lifestyle Winslow had taken for granted. Meanwhile, he went with the flow, confident that if he failed, there would always be another brother, another investment firm, another cocktail party. And if you believe the gossip, in case of failure, he could always return to mom and dad and a fat salary managing the family fund. These were our Thursdays, Ash cruising the happy hour waters like a great white shark, Vinny frolicking nearby like a happy little seal, and Marty and I drinking cocktails, watching shows, and absorbing gossip like a pair of quiet sea anemones. It wasn't my favorite way to spend my free time, but Ash was happy and Marty was having fun, so I didn't complain too much about having to put on a suit and support my wife. Our marriage was a balancing act between two young people with jobs that were too demanding and a connection that was too important to lose sight of. It was a marriage of quiet admiration and exhilaration, principles and compromises, the kind that a young couple makes when they come to terms with it and lay the foundation for a lucrative career, a home, children, and the rest of the American dream. It was difficult, but we worked on it, and it worked to our advantage. That's not to say it was all easy. Ashley has a jealous streak that I found outrageous, considering how attractive she was. On the other hand, I have my own problems with the green-eyed monster. In a city of 8 million people where the fear of missing out on a bigger and better deal is as much a part of life as subway rides and hot dogs boiling in the same water throughout the day, I found it hard to believe that my wife had settled on me. Oddly enough, it was reassuring to know that she thought so highly of me. The bigger problem was Ashley's sense of justice. In the office, her morale was flexible, a necessary characteristic if you want to make it on Wall Street. But in Ashley's personal life, her sense of right and wrong was rigid and unshakable. When she felt wronged, Ash would immediately take revenge, and her revenge was, at least in my opinion, twisted, treacherous, and diabolical. This usually happened like this. After Ash was convinced that she had been sinned against, she confronted the offender and presented her reasons, often in a raised voice. At this point, a sincere apology or a series of apologies in some form of repentance might be enough to bring balance to the universe. But if the offender continued to prove their innocence or had not shown enough remorse, Ashley's inner avenger came into play. On the surface, Ashley let the argument die out and life seemingly went on as usual. However, in the background, she worked diligently, weighing the evidence, making a verdict, and calmly assigning what she believed was the appropriate punishment. There was no appeal court, no stay of execution, no higher power. When Ashley delivered her verdict, she didn't need outside confirmation to say she did the right thing, and she rejected any arguments that she went too far. Sometimes I wondered where Ash got her sense of justice. I assumed that this was a consequence of her childhood, the childhood of a little girl who sometimes found herself at the mercy of 4 huge brothers. Direct confrontation was futile, and if she did take her grievances to her parents, she would be labeled a sneak, a devastating insult in a house full of boys. I can easily imagine little Ashley coming up with worthy punishments for her brothers and then putting them into practice. And if there are 4 rowdy boys in the house, who will suspect the angelic little sister? Ashley's early years as a gorilla may also explain why her punishments often seemed excessive. According to my calculations, for a kilogram of crime, she usually gave 1.5 to 2 kilograms of punishment. Sometimes I wondered if she still saw herself as a powerless little sister fighting secret battles against her older brothers, or maybe that extra 50% was a trial fee that she accrued as payback for her time as judge, jury, and executioner. As an example, one Sunday a few months after our wedding, Ash and I were clearing out the mess in our apartment, sweeping out the junk that had accumulated in closets and corners, collecting clothes for Goodwill, and saying goodbye to the college textbooks that we had finally admitted we would never read again. By the time we finished, the living room was littered with bags and boxes, and I was hauling trash to the corner dumpster in bags to Goodwill down the block. All seemed well in Walkerland as we contemplated the new space in our closets and bookshelves. 40 minutes later, I was lying on the couch clutching a beer as Ashley loomed over me, almost vibrating with rage. It looks like the dry cleaning bag had somehow gone missing. After finding out that it wasn't in the bin and that Goodwill wasn't going to let us roam around the warehouse looking for it, my wife was left with a full-blown rage with no one to take it out on but me. Apparently, I didn't look through the bags carefully enough when I took them out of the apartment, and now Ash was missing 3 dresses. I apologized. What else could I do? But it was like trying to fight a forest fire with a handful of sand. After the 3rd apology, I drank the rest of my beer, told my wife I needed time alone, and went for a long walk. When I returned a few hours later, 3 new dresses were in the closet, and Ash was sleeping. The next morning, when I woke up, Ashley was gone. I did my morning chores and started getting dressed for work. The process stopped when I realized that I didn't have any pants, not in the closet, not in the laundry room, even the suit trousers were missing. I sent Ash a message, "Honey, have you seen my pants? I cannot find them." The answer came immediately, "Search Goodwill." Fighting a wave of rage, I finally found a pair of dark sweatpants in my gym bag. Not ideal, but I was running late, and they should have lasted until I ran to Uniqlo for lunch. When I got home that evening, I had 3 new pairs of pants. While I put them away in the closet, Ashley watched me with a strangely pleased look in her eyes. After that, I went for a walk again. To put it simply, I couldn't be in the apartment with her for another minute. The final tally, 3 dresses lost in an honest mix-up and 12 pants, including 2 irreplaceable pairs of suit pants, sacrificed at the stake of divine justice. I don't know exactly what scale Ashley used, but it seemed to me that the punishment far outweighed the crime. For the first time in our young marriage, I began to wonder if I had made a mistake. It took several days before we found mutual understanding again. Ashley never apologized, but my stony silence seemed to impress her. Over the next few nights, she brought home dinner, working her way through my favorite restaurants. On Wednesday, I found a J.Crew gift card on my dresser. That night, I had enough pants to last me a week, and when I went to a social gathering at Pearson Bateman on Thursday, she greeted me with a big hug and a kiss. It seemed like we were back to ourselves. Besides the fact that the pants episode taught me to be very careful about checking trash bags before throwing them in the trash, it taught me an important lesson about Ashley's revenge. Even though she seemed to derive a sense of satisfaction from being the instrument of divine retribution, her actions did not bring her joy. She approached revenge as a grim duty, not as a hobby, something to be endured if only as a means to fix the world. In the case of my 10 missing pairs of pants, that liability was worth about $500, not counting my now incomplete suits. We were not short of money, but changing clothes strained our finances for a month or 2. Still, she accepted our fate stoically, almost as if the cost of our new wardrobe were a tithe or a tax we needed to pay before moving on. Ashley's payback never again rose to the level of missing pants, but every now and then I would see a strange, pleased look flicker across her face, usually when I discovered something odd like salt in my porridge or the fact that a book I was reading somehow disappeared. In the end, I accepted it as part of our life together. I have my quirks, like my firm belief that peanut butter should be kept in the refrigerator, and Ashley has hers, like her psychotic need for violent revenge. But I reckon that when you love someone, you accept the whole person, both the hot, nicely kitten who loves to run through the trees in Central Park and the scary revenge monster who sometimes raids your closet. I learned to apologize when possible, but I also didn't want to live in fear of my wife's temper, so there were times when I dug in my heels, battened down the hatches, and waited for the hurricane of retribution to sweep through the apartment. We found a balance, and most of the time, it worked for us. That was until Caitlin showed up. Let me start by saying that I didn't hire Caitlin. That decision was made by people 3 or 4 steps up the food chain through a mysterious vetting process that I'm sure involves drawing a pentagram and slaughtering a goat. I participated in one selection series during which I pointed out that her journalistic experience and ability to produce first-class texts in a tight time frame put her ahead of the rest of the applicants. The HR bigwigs listened to my group's feedback, thanked me for my time, and moved on. Needless to say, I was surprised when they took our advice and hired her. Neither Caitlin's impressive resume nor my lack of involvement in her hiring impressed Ashley when they met at an employer-sponsored event over the weekend. The problem is that in addition to being a highly skilled writer and editor, Caitlin is also stunning, with a toned body, perky breasts, and a gorgeous face. While her standard work uniform of baggy sweaters and blue jeans hid her figure, the same could not be said about the spandex leggings and thin sweatshirt she was wearing when she met my wife. Ash and Caitlin were doing girly things, complimenting each other on their matching running suits and sneakers, and chatting about the weather. To an outsider, this might seem like a completely banal exchange between a wife and her husband's coworker, but I noticed Ashley's narrowed eyes, which did not bode well for my marital harmony. When we returned to the apartment after dinner, Ash was uncharacteristically silent. I knew what would happen next. She would silently marinate in her anger, letting it fester and ferment, ready to explode. Realizing that I needed to prevent this or risk losing my pants again, I had just restocked up to 7 and was hoping to keep them for a while. I spoke up. "I'm glad you finally met Caitlin. Looks like you and her got along well." "Yes, Charles." "She's wonderful," my wife muttered. "Where did you hide it, Charles?" "Not a very good sign." "Hide what, dear?" I smiled. "We don't communicate with my colleagues too often. In fact, I think today you met half of them for the first time." "Nonsense. I saw them all at the Christmas party." I kept a smile on my face. "That was 8 months ago, Ash. Heck, half the office has already changed, transferred, or moved. Or in Caitlin's case, she was hired." She frowned. "What are her qualifications?" "BA in English from Brown University with a focus in business writing. She worked in journalism for 5 years and in digital marketing for another 3 years. In general, the same as me." I grinned. "Except for Brown, of course. At the rate she's going, she'll eventually become my boss." Her voice had softened a little, but her gait was still stiff, like that of an attacked dog on high alert. "So, you will work under her?" I looked around. Ash still had steel in her eyes, but she was already smiling. God bless, I thought. "Of course not, my dear," I smiled back. "You are the only woman I'm under, and I would hardly call it work." Ash's grin grew even wider, and when we got back to our apartment, there was a competition to see who could get without clothes first. In bed, she was on fire. She pushed me onto my back and took me almost immediately after I took off my pants. It was hot but intense, and I had the feeling that she was laying claim to me. By the time she was done, it seemed like there wasn't an inch of me on my body that she hadn't touched, kissed, squeezed, kneaded, or marked. The next couple of weeks went fairly smoothly, although it took a long time and a lot of intimate before the tension went away. Meanwhile, Ashley covered my body with love marks to the point that several guys in the gym started asking strange, vague questions. I never found out whether they considered me a battered husband or if I simply had signs of acute anemia. Ash never brought up Caitlin, and I tried to do the same. I suppose it's standard in the cheater's handbook to never mention the other woman, but in my case, I just didn't want to upset the apple cart. I thought it had worked and that I had somehow dodged the bullet. Meanwhile, work went on as usual, at least until the end of October. Every year, my company releases a huge report describing its projects around the world. No matter how well we meet deadlines or how many emails we send, project managers at various charities inevitably wait until the last minute to send their reports. This means that my team and I have to work early mornings, late evenings, and canceled weekends for a week or two to get everything done. We call it Hell Week, figuratively, I know. Did I mention that we are writers? When Hell Week arrived, everything was almost back to normal for Ash and me. That Monday, my normal 8-hour day turned into a 12-hour editing marathon, and by the time I got home, I felt like I was being tied up with rubber bands and duct tape. All I could think about was a hot shower and a warm bed, and I certainly didn't have the energy to argue with Ashley. She attacked me before I even took off my coat. "Where have you been?" "What?" I paused, taking off one sleeve. "Didn't you receive my SMS?" "You mean that one text you sent 6 hours ago?" I wondered if it had really been 6 hours since I sent a message reminding Ashley that I was going to be at the office late. To be honest, I couldn't remember. Even in my daze, I realized I had two options: get into an argument with Ashley that would likely end with me sleeping on the couch, or try to defuse the situation by making my way to bed and falling asleep. "How long ago?" I asked vaguely, finishing taking off my coat and starting to rummage through the closet in search of a hanger. "Sorry, I lost track of time." She tapped her foot. This was not good. "Still would," I sighed. "Remember when I told you this was Hell Week, Ash? That my team would spend the entire day, plus a few more, trying to put together the annual report?" "Yes, damn it." "I'm sorry, Ash. It was crazy, and I couldn't check my cell phone all the time. It will be like this all week." She was there, the whole team was there all day, including Caitlin. I looked Ashley straight in the eyes with as much sincerity as I could muster, considering that my eyelids seemed to weigh about 20 kilograms each. "Ash, I'm really sorry I didn't check my phone. I've spent the last 12 hours putting out fires, and frankly, it will be like this until we meet the deadline next Thursday. It's 8 days, Ash. Remember last year when I had to work all weekend? I'll have to do it again this year." I let my shoulders drop. "I need to go to bed, Ash. I'm really sorry, but this is part of my job. This was part of my job long before Caitlin was hired and will be part of my job after she leaves." The tapping stopped. I chuckled dryly. In the end, you know how it is. Team members are constantly moved and mixed. The only reason I haven't been transferred is because there's no one who can edit articles and run the website at the same time. Ashley's brow furrowed again. "But for now, will you still be working with her?" "Yes, my love. I'm still working with Caitlin, and with Aaron, and with Kim, and with Jake, and with Brandon, and with the rest of the team. And that's all I do." We came to a compromise. Ashley allowed herself to be reassured, and I agreed to respond to her text messages with due readiness. She wanted immediate answers, but I persuaded her to give me 10 minutes of freedom. It was a classic compromise, but neither of us was particularly happy with it. I would have to be on an electronic leash during the most difficult time of the year, and she would have to deal with her jealousy. When we went to bed, there was still something akin to a hard look in her eyes, but she quickly snuggled up to me and pulled my hand to her chest. It was still there when I woke up the next morning. A fragile peace reigned in our apartment. At work, I felt like I was constantly caught between Ashley's insecurities and the editing pile that grew no matter how quickly we worked as a team. I knew from the previous year that we would eventually reach a tipping point, and the tide would begin to subside, but that was almost a week away. Meanwhile, Ashley was pushing her text messages to the limit. At least 10 times a day, a text message would appear, and I would have to stop what I was doing to respond. Usually, I'd just have to pause editing for a minute, but a couple of times she'd text in the middle of a meeting, and I'd have to write a quick reply under the table, hoping no one would figure out what I was doing. Her messages were always harmless little notes like "How are you?" or "I hope everything is fine," but the meaning was clear: I was being watched. Timing was also a challenge. Sometimes Ashley would start texting a few minutes after I arrived at the office, but other times she would wait an hour or so. Sometimes they followed each other in a row, and sometimes hours passed between them. I felt like she was playing Battleship with me, hoping to catch an unprotected moment when Caitlin and I were having a quickie in a closet somewhere. This could have continued until the end of Hell Week, but I made a mistake. My phone charger at home was on its last legs and only worked if I tucked the cord under the phone and pulled it tight. It was an easy fix, all I needed was to buy a new cord, but it all happened during Hell Week, and between Ashley and the annual report, I didn't have enough working brain to deal with another problem. As a result, when I came to the office on Friday morning, my phone was at 7%. I usually put it on charge as soon as I got to my desk, but I'd barely had time to take off my coat when Jake came running in with the latest trouble, and I immediately got to work. By the time I went out to get some fresh air, it was already about noon, and my phone was dead. In retrospect, the horror I felt when I realized I'd been without contact for hours should have been a wake-up call, but after living with Ashley for 4 years, the frog was well on its way to being boiled. My pounding heart and growing sense of panic when I connected the phone didn't even seem strange to me. Damn. My phone's battery was dead, and it took almost a minute to get enough charge to turn on. The pulse was pounding in my ears. Damn. The phone vibrated quickly, starting the download procedure, and then vibrated several more times, signaling the receipt of a bunch of SMS. Damn. SMS messages quickly turned from harmless "Hi baby, how are you?" to angry ones, "Where the hell are you, Charles? And you have 5 minutes to answer your call or you'll be sorry." Considering that the last message had arrived half an hour ago, it was clear that I was way overdue. Crap. I quickly pressed the speed dial option but got 2 rings and then her answering machine. She screened my calls. I tried again and got the same result. The third time, I left a message explaining what happened, then sent an SMS with the same, albeit abbreviated, explanation. No answer. Another shorter SMS. No answer. At this point, I was torn between running to her office and arguing that I was right, or going back to work. One option would preserve my marital harmony, the other would preserve my job, which is key because I will definitely need a salary to pay rent after she kicks me out. In any case, I had to wait about half an hour until my phone was sufficiently charged. After the last batch of messages, there was no way I was leaving the table without my electronic umbilical cord. While I waited, I tried to get back to editing, but my brain was melting, and my heart was still beating out of my chest. I thought that no matter what I did, I couldn't guarantee that Ashley would back down. Something is wrong with this, I understood. Despite my determination not to become hostage to my wife's hot temper and perverted sense of justice, this is exactly what happened. Here I am, stuck in the middle of the hardest week of my entire work year, and I can't concentrate because I missed a couple of texts, and I'm afraid my wife might explode. Something is wrong with this picture. I was thinking about how to express this to Ash. What can I say? How do I explain that I can't live in fear of her temper or that her thirst for revenge could destroy our marriage? I thought about sending a text message but immediately discarded the idea. This is a conversation that needs to be at face-to-face, perhaps in a therapist's office. I was thinking about how to broach this topic when another text message arrived. Everything is fine. All fine. God, I almost had a heart attack. Ashley spent the last 3 text messages kicking my 5th place thoroughly. This is definitely not normal. It's hard to read emotions over text messages, but I figured either Ash had realized she was being crazy and had let me off the hook, or more likely, she had found me guilty of some crime and was already planning my punishment. Then another realization hit me. No matter what Ashley's message meant, there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. Going to her office was risky, and trying to dissuade her via SMS was stupid. I realized that all I could do was ride out the coming storm and hope that when it passed, my marriage and my wardrobe wouldn't suffer too much. I actually tried to leave work early, but by the time I got home, it was already 8:30 p.m., and like every night that week, I was shattered. Standing in front of my apartment door, I took a deep breath, gathered my strength, and went inside. "Darling, I'm home," I called. "I am in the kitchen." Her voice sounded normal, and I allowed myself a little optimism. Maybe things won't be as bad as I thought. On the other hand, her cheerful voice raised some concerns. Why isn't she more upset? Has her revenge already begun? Will my dinner be full of laxatives, vomit root, nails? Hanging up my coat and taking off my boots, I prepared for the attack. Instead, I received Ashley with a relaxed smile on her face. "Welcome home, honey," she chirped, hugging me. The kiss she gave me was warm, loving, and slightly minty. What's happening? I was still in damage control mode. Hello, my love. Sorry, I missed your SMS today. My phone was dead in. She smiled. Don't worry about it, honey. You explained everything in your message. She stood up and kissed me again. No buts. Mistakes happen. On the way home from work, I bought you a new cord. Who is this woman, and what did she do to my wife? In hindsight, I probably should have investigated further, but it was almost 9 p.m. I had just returned home from 12 hours of work, and having barely prevented one heart attack, I didn't want to cause another. With a sigh of relief, I gave in. Thank you, Ash. I'll make sure my phone is charged tomorrow. She smiled widely again. Watch this, baby. Ash and I agreed that she would be in charge of dinner during Hell Week. She ordered Chinese takeout, and I poked around a bit, but the day threw me off track, and I soon found myself dozing over my plate. It's time for me to go to bed, I said. You are walking, she smiled at me again. Maybe after a while, I want to read a little, I replied. Cold, I walked to the bathroom, took a bath, and fell into bed. As I was dozing off, I noticed a slight smell of something in the air, maybe an air freshener. I didn't have time to think about it before sleep took over. The next day was Saturday, but I still needed to go to the office. I got up, took a shower, and dressed quietly before leaving the bedroom. I looked at Ashley on the bed, curled up in the fetal position and wrapped in soft yellow sheets. She looked so peaceful. This is another chameleon face of hers, a soft, vulnerable woman that I want to protect, nothing like the tough financial analyst in the dark pantsuit or the confident wife I saw the night before with a satisfied look. Stop, I felt my good mood deflate. Crap. I shook my head. You shouldn't create problems where there are none, I told myself. The trousers were not missing, the clothes were intact, and there was no reason to take on tomorrow's worries when I already had a difficult day ahead of me. However, my thoughts kept returning to that look in her eyes. Did it really happen? Ash only texted me 4 times that day, and I tried to respond quickly. They were all fun and lighthearted, no yelling or swearing, and she seemed pleased with my answers. When I returned home that evening, everything seemed normal. Mostly normal. Her kisses were even more minty than usual, and she ordered chicken and lemon sauce from a Greek restaurant. She often ordered takeout, but I wasn't going to fight about it. I looked for that satisfied sparkle in Ashley's eyes. Maybe it was there, I wasn't sure. No matter how tired I was, I thought I was imagining everything. In the bedroom, I smelled the air freshener again. Honey, it smells strange here. Did you spray something? Yes, I think one of the neighbors smokes. There was a very strong smell. Strange. A few neighbors actually smoked weed, but we usually smelled it in the hallway, not in the bedroom. I shrugged. The mystery is solved. Sunday morning was the same. I woke up at 6 o'clock, took a shower, and dressed in silence. I looked at Ashley nestled on the pale green sheets, looking like some kind of mermaid or Botticelli's Venus, albeit dressed in a flannel nightgown. I kissed her and left for the office. Later, it occurred to me that on Saturday, the sheets were yellow, and on Sunday, they were green. I shrugged. We change our sheets fairly regularly, but we don't have a set schedule. I think Ash just decided it was time to change the bedding. That night was the same, peppermint kisses, food from the corner diner, notes of air freshener, uninterrupted sleep. Maybe the smug look on her face the next morning, a quiet shower, a silent farewell, and a kiss to my wife, dead asleep and comfortably nestled on the white sheets. That day I was at work. Damn, white sheets. I couldn't think of any reason why Ashley would change her sheets 2 days in a row, well, not one that I would like to consider. Add in a freshener and perhaps a pleased look, and Ash seemed to be upping her revenge game. If she does what I thought, then this is not just the disappearance of pants but irreparable damage to married life. For a moment, I doubted whether I really wanted to know the truth but realized that this is a case where ignorance is definitely not bliss. I can't live with my suspicions, and if they are true, I'm pretty sure I won't be able to live with my wife. Before I could change my mind, I did some research and placed an order on Amazon. $26 including expedited shipping, and a pair of spy cameras was on its way to me. I prayed that my suspicions would be wrong. That evening, peppermint kisses, Moroccan food, air freshener, and rose-colored sheets. The look of satisfaction was definitely there. I looked in the laundry basket, but it was empty. Damn. On Monday, the wave of editing peaked and began to recede. The pile of stories began to dwindle. The end was near. At 11 o'clock, I received a message in the mail that my parcel had arrived. By midday, work had slowed down a bit, and my employees barely looked up when I told them I had to run to a meeting. The cameras were disguised as a smoke detector and an alarm clock, and installing them in my bedroom was a piece of cake. Ash wrote 5 text messages that day. At 5:15 p.m., I received a message that the cameras had activated. Apparently, my wife got home early. An hour later, I received the last text from Ashley. I wanted to know the truth, but if the video was what I thought it was, it would soon begin a process I hoped I would never have to go through. I was messing around with my work and decided I wouldn't watch the video until the next day. If my marriage is over, it can wait one more night. I texted Ash to let her know I'd be home at 8:30. I wondered if she would get angry, but I couldn't bring myself to care that much. My emotions were muted and clouded as if I could feel them through a fog. At 8, I stumbled home that evening. Peppermint kisses, takeout pizza, air freshener, a satisfied smile, and yellow sheets again. This made sense since we only have 4 sets of bedding. This also explained yesterday's trip to the laundry. As I tossed and turned in bed that night, I realized that no matter what was in the air, I never wanted to smell air freshener again. The next morning, Ash lay curled up in bed, beaming in the morning sun. I looked at her for a long time. I'll miss this. Between insomnia and fear, I was still in a deep fog. I became aware of it when it dissipated. I realized that an ocean of pain awaited me. I got dressed and showered in silence. Ash blew one last kiss goodbye. Things had mostly calmed down at work. It might be another 2 or 3 days before we're done, but there was light at the end of the tunnel. At 11 o'clock, I told the team that I was going to a quiet place, a conference room that the company had equipped with sofas, chairs, and a couple of small tables. It was essentially the corporate version of a college study room. It was also the only place where I could watch videos from my bedroom in relative privacy. The only other person there was Kim, one of my colleagues. She was curled up in a chair by the window, completely immersed in her laptop. I settled down on the sofa at the far end of the room. If the videos showed what I expected, I would want my back to the wall. My plan was to listen to the video rather than watch it. I reasoned that seeing Ashley in the arms of another man would make her impossible to forgive, and I didn't want to close off all options, including reconciliation, before I knew what I was dealing with. So, I put on my headphones, queued up the smoke detector video, and slammed the screen shut. From the sounds of it, it was exactly as bad as I expected. The camera was motion activated, so it started recording when someone entered the room. I heard the rustling of clothes and laughter and then a strangely familiar voice. From what I heard, it became clear that my wife was pleasuring some man while he laughed at me. About halfway through the audio, I recognized the voice. It was Winslow Hubble. My vision blurred, and I closed my eyes, feeling tears rolling down my cheeks. I was crushed, yes, but also confused. I'm not going to say that Ash works in an office full of Chippendale models, but in a vat of testosterone poison that was Pearson Bateman, there is no shortage of toned bodies, strong chins, and chiseled features. But instead of getting herself an office hunk, Ash chose the flabby, fattest trash from the small part of the gene pool for night. It didn't make sense. The soundtrack provided clues to Winslow's appeal. A moment later, he began again to mock the size of my manhood and praise his own. I didn't expect Ashley to come to my defense, and she didn't. She was never a particularly vocal lover, but apparently, Winslow Hubble inspired her to new achievements. She screamed and complained that her intim had never been so amazing. Winslow pushed her, demanding to know if my manhood was less, my night less perfect, my control of her body less perfect, and Ash gave him what he wanted. It's not easy to hear that you're worthless in bed, and it's especially hard to hear yourself compared negatively to a worthless sack of crap like Winslow Hubble. Then I heard Winslow's sound be loudly, and Ash followed it with a series of screams that rose to an operatic crescendo, the likes of which I had never heard from her before. Her screams pierced my ears, driving my thoughts away, leaving only fragments. Better than me? Crap. I felt frozen, devastated. I could hear their heavy breathing in my headphones, in my ears, panting. I looked up at the clock on the wall. I stared blankly at the numbers, at the second hand running across the dial. It's only been 20 minutes since I started the video. My brain was stuck on a number repeating, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. 20 minutes to end my marriage. 20 minutes. Considering the time it took to undress, please your lover, and lay on the bed, how much time was left? 5 minutes? 10? How good was Winslow? Isn't this guy as gifted as a Clydesdale? Does he know some long-forgotten Oriental secrets that make women arrive at the finish line like freight trains? Is there really an intimate genius buried in that plump, pompous body? Ashley and Winslow were still puffing in my ears. Then he spoke. From the conversation, I realized that he wanted to humiliate me in every possible way. Ash asked, "Why does this turn you on so much?" Winslow chuckled, "Your ideal husband. Every Thursday, I watch him and Marty have their little conversations and look at us all as if they're so smart, so much better. I wonder what he would say if he knew I was here giving you this." She snorted with laughter, "Do not dare. Don't worry, my dear. I'm not going to do anything that would jeopardize that or my marriage, for that matter." I opened the computer and pressed pause. The camera was focused on the two of them. Winslow was all red and sweaty, his mouth open, his eyes half closed. Ash lay next to him, the sheet pulled up to her collarbones, her eyes sparkling with smug satisfaction. That damn look. I couldn't figure out what it was, joy, satisfaction, cruelty. 20 minutes. Over the years we've been together, I thought I'd learned a few things about Ashley, including the fact that she wasn't the quickie type. Night with her, even her quickie night on weekdays, was slow with a lot of languid foreplay and teasing. The idea of ripping her clothes off and pushing her to her breaking point in less than half an hour was simply unimaginable. Either Winslow is some kind of hot wizard or something else is going on. I needed to watch the video. From the sounds I was hearing, my marriage was already over, and I couldn't imagine doing any more damage. I thought gloomily, maybe I'll learn something new. I rewound the video back to when they first entered the bedroom, a little over 19 minutes, then I pressed the play button. I've heard stories about the Nixon-Kennedy debates. People who heard them on the radio were confident of Nixon's victory, and those who watched them on television were confident of Kennedy's victory. Watching Ash and Winslow, I finally understood this phenomenon. Ashley was the host from the very beginning. Seeing her with Winslow made me realize I was watching a master class in seduction. Her every glance, every smile and grin was designed to convince him that he was, in fact, an irresistible Don Juan, and this was complete nonsense. When I saw his equipment, I laughed in surprise. This man was, well, let's just say, not gifted. At first, I wondered why she pulled Winslow down, but when his face was hidden, everything became clear. When he couldn't see her anymore, Ash didn't have to watch her expression. Although she continued to declare that he owned her body in bed, her eyes were focused into the distance and her expression remained blank. I knew that look. Ashley was a million miles away mentally, going through her shopping list, planning dinner, or imagining herself on a beach somewhere. It was not a look of bliss. She gets this look when she's going through something slightly unpleasant, like giving blood or cleaning the sink drain. I imagine that this is exactly what she looked like at a gynecologist's appointment. As I may have mentioned, Ashley's body has haunted my dreams, and for good reason. She was a vision, a classic work of art, Botticelli's Venus. Winslow, on the other hand, was barely recognizable as a man, pale, cheesy flesh, greasy and slightly. Seeing them together was like watching a manatee trying to mate with a Madonna statue. I couldn't help but burst out laughing, even though tears were still dampening my cheeks. In front of me was Ash, taking revenge on me for some imagined insult by doing something so unpleasant that she had to mentally distance herself. But Winslow, imagining himself the master of the universe, taking away the spoils of war from the man below him, loudly declared his intimate superiority over the poor idiot whom he cuckolds. And me, the poor man, watching my wife do what was clearly the intimate equivalent of taking out the trash while she loudly admonished her partner, trying to hurry him along. In an instant, I understood why Ash chose Winslow. It wasn't lust or desire. In fact, it was quite the opposite. She chose him because he was simple, accessible, and a relationship with him was unlikely to develop into a long-term one. Most importantly, Ashley knew that she would not receive pleasure from night with him. If she had chosen one of the square-jawed jocks from her office for revenge, the scales of justice would have swung the other way, from divine retribution to corrupt infidelity. So instead of having an intimate out of joy, she did it out of obligation. Instead of choosing a partner who attracted her, she chose one who disgusted her. She hurt herself to hurt me. I understood Ash's reasoning to some extent. I even respected it, but I couldn't get past it. Watching what was happening on the screen, I realized that she was scaring me. Throwing out a closet full of pants is extreme but also slightly funny, and it has become a silly story I sometimes tell friends after a few drinks. But in the process of turning Ashley's justice into a comedy act, I allowed myself to overlook the darker aspects. The fact is that my wife did a very destructive thing, knowing full well that it would put a strain on our marriage and on our finances. It would make me, the man she claimed to love, feel unsafe in my home. Now, she inflicted another severe punishment, many times worse than her raid on my wardrobe. Everything else, the fact that I didn't deserve to be a cuckold, the fact that I might never find out about it, didn't matter. All that mattered was that she did it, and that, judging by that damn look of satisfaction, she didn't doubt her decision for a second. What other punishments might she consider justified? Seriously, what's the next step after cheating? Crippling me, cooking me like a rabbit? What if we had children? Can I risk that one day they will become part of one of her plans for revenge, pawns in her quest to bring balance to the universe? Or worse, what if they too become victims of her justice? Watching Ashley's expression as she lay next to Winslow, I realized that I no longer felt safe with her, not in my wardrobe, not in my relationship, not in the bed she had desecrated. While I appreciated that she changed the sheets, it doesn't make up for the fact that she allowed this pig, this sleazy pile of pus and privilege, to enter our home and have her in our bed. If she did it on Friday as I suspected, then she had screwed him in our bed 5 times already. She's going to do it again today. I realized that I could not return home that evening or any other in the near future. Given what I've seen, I must confront her, and given her belief in my alleged infidelity and her desperate need for justice, there's no telling what her reaction will be. How can you properly take revenge for a divorce, and what would it look like with another 50% added? The only question is, when should I warn her? The angel on one shoulder voted to send her a message immediately. He proclaimed that the quality of mercy was not unnatural, that forgiveness was divine, and that I should let her know before she screwed Winslow again. The devil on the other shoulder whispered that even if I didn't want to punish her, that didn't mean I shouldn't allow her to punish myself. At 5:20, my phone vibrated. At 6:30, I sent her a text message with video clips, telling her I was staying with Aeon, one of my colleagues. 2 days later, I began divorce proceedings. Like I said, it didn't take me long to forgive Ashley. After watching the dear 5 minutes of penetration on 6, it was hard for me to imagine a more brutal punishment than intimate with Winslow Hubble. Additionally, her obsession led to the end of our friendship and the destruction of our marriage. And although I joked at the beginning of this story that she missed our apartment and the inside promotional track at Pearson Batman, I knew she desperately missed the loss of our relationship. I think we both know that we were something bigger and better. But if I felt compassion for Ash, then for Winslow Hubble, I have nothing but contempt. Between my conversations with Marty and the gossip I collected during happy hour, I gained insight into how for years he was protected by his wealth and privilege. Simply put, every time Winnie got into trouble, it was his prep school friends, his fraternity brothers, and his dad's checkbook that solved the problem. I thought through all the usual revenge scenarios and realized that none of them would work. If I openly attack him, his parents will ensure that the consequences destroy me and possibly Ash. As for Winslow, he'll likely continue to be a happy seal frolicking around, oblivious to the damage he leaves in his wake. I was tormented by the problem: how to punish someone who has everything. Lying in bed at night, I remembered Winslow's dialogue on video, his comments about how I am a cuckold and how he is intimately superior to me, his need to know that he is better than me. And then I realized that there was something that I could learn from Winslow Hubble. It will take some time and a lot of research, but what the heck? I no longer spend nights at home with my wife. And then 6 months later, I called him. Winslow agreed to meet me at 3 Olives, where they had happy hour on Thursdays. I did everything I shouldn't have done, chose a bar that Winslow knows, where he is completely comfortable, arrived 5 minutes later to give him time to take a seat and order his first drink. He figured he'd be wearing one of the suits his parents' tailor had made for him, so he chose comfortable jeans, a blue blazer, and a white shirt. He was shaved and groomed, so I left my hair slightly unkempt and didn't bother shaving off the 5-hour stubble. Winslow thinks I'm inferior to him, and I wanted to do everything I could to reinforce that impression. When I approached the table, Winslow was dressed exactly as I had imagined, a pompous Windsor tie, a striped suit, a Brooks Brothers wool shirt, cufflinks. His half-lidded eyes studied my casual clothes, noting every detail. He saw himself as the master in a chair in a bar for powerful men, sitting opposite the man he had defeated. I felt unstable, just as I wanted. He didn't get up to greet me. "Winslow," I said, taking off my backpack and sitting down. "Chucky," he smiled, "long time no see." "Yes, for a long time. Give me a second." I signaled to the waitress and gave her my order while Winslow looked at me. Obviously, members of the lower classes should not ignore those above them when ordering a gin and tonic. When she left, I turned to him again. "Winnie, thanks for coming." He blushed at the nickname. "I don't have much time," he snapped. "Why am I here?" "Well, to be honest, I need some closure." He chuckled and shook his martini glass. "I would imagine a divorce would do that." "Yes, that definitely put an end to it between me and Ash." I nodded to him. "However, you and I also have unfinished business." Winslow laughed. "I can't even imagine what it could be." "Maybe it's that your wife decided to try another man," he grinned, "the best, and you, of course, just couldn't resist." "Why, Ashley is a beautiful woman," his eyes sparkled, "and she's very good in the bedroom. Besides, from what she said, you weren't giving her what she needed." "We'll come back to this later. After I found out about you too, I thought about revenge. In Ashley's case, everything is simple. We got divorced, and I haven't seen her since. We had a great marriage, and she ruined it. She'll have to live with it." I sipped my drink. "You, however, turned out to be a tougher nut to crack." "What are you talking about?" "Here's the thing, Vinny, you are protected. Let's say I do the obvious and beat you to a pulp." His eyes widened, and he slowly removed his hands from the table. "I have no doubt that I can do it, and I'm sure it will be a lot of fun. But as soon as I have time to wash the blood from my hands, your parents will lock me up." I looked down at his hands on his lap. "Besides, you're probably the kind of guy that mom and dad make you carry around a panic button, in which case, I'll be lucky if I get a few punches in before the hired guards take me to the floor." Winslow blushed and pointedly put his hands back on the table. He took a sip of his drink, a big gulp. "So, you're not going to try and beat me up?" "No. The same goes for murder. I'm sure I can find someone to put a bullet in you. Maybe I can even save up some money and find a real professional who can make you disappear." Looking at his face, I tried not to grin. I needed to look serious. "But then I'll be FAI with the same problem. Your parents will undoubtedly hire a bunch of investigators, and I'll have to worry about all the evidence my killer will leave behind. Sooner or later, he'll be caught, they'll get in touch with me, and then I'll end up in jail, this time charged with murder and with a few thousand less to spend on my legal defense. Why not leave everything as it is?" "I'm sure I could," I interrupted him. "I thought about an adult film out of revenge. I could send a video of you to your friends, your parents, your work." Winslow was starting to turn a little green. "But what's the point? Your parents already know what you are like. They've been cleaning up after you for years. Besides, as soon as mom and dad find out about my attempts to tarnish your good name," I snorted, "well, I think my days at my current job will be numbered. As for my next job, I'm guessing it will include the phrase, 'Would you like some fries with these?'" Winslow leaned forward. "So, will you leave everything as it is?" "Not really. I took a folder out of my backpack and put it on the table. I realized that there is one thing I can do, but before we get to that, have you ever wondered how much your parents protect you? I don't think, yes. I don't believe that you know how to do this. I took some photos from the folder and placed them face down, planning my revenge. I did a lot of research. It's amazing what you can find when you have a lot of time and a bottomless well of anger. For example, do you remember Mary Gray and Danielle Brennan? A look of shock flashed across Winslow's face, but he tried to control it. I don't remember. Perhaps I met them in college. I snorted. Don't be modest, Winnie. You did much more than just meet them. In fact, because of you, they both dropped out of school and returned home. I turned the first photo over. It showed a pale, black-haired woman holding a small child in her arms. This might jog your memory. About 6 months after leaving school, Mary gave birth to a child. He looks a lot like you, or at least he did before he lost the baby fat. You'll be glad to know that she graduated from a local college. From what she writes on Facebook, they are both doing well. He chuckled mockingly, but sweat began to form on his forehead. There's no way you can prove that this child is mine, he stammered. Don't worry, Mary won't testify against you. On the other hand, young William did not sign a non-disclosure agreement, and his DNA is ironclad proof of paternity. I raised an eyebrow at him. If I were you, I wouldn't plan to go into politics. Winslow's face flushed, and he began to look slightly tense. So, this is your revenge, he chuckled, speculations and insinuations. Calm down, Vinny, we're just getting started. I turned over another photo. This one wasn't as cheerful. The woman in it had blonde hair, sunken cheeks, haunted eyes. It was more difficult with Danielle. In fact, I was only able to talk to her parents. She seems to have become depressed after graduating from college. She tried to commit suicide several times. He turned pale. You can't hold me responsible for this. Well, you and a few of your fraternity brothers. Of course, there's no proof. The blood tests and rape kit they did at the hospital somehow disappeared, and she appears to have signed a non-disclosure agreement. But we both know what you did to her. He pushed away from the table as if he was afraid to touch the photographs for fear that they would burn him. You can't prove anything. Not in court. I looked at him until he looked away. But we both know what you did, Winnie. You know she hasn't dated anyone since you. She is afraid to go out anywhere. As her mother says, she says that she still wakes up screaming. Winslow jumped to his feet. Who would have thought that he could move so fast? I don't have to listen to this, he hissed. I'm leaving. Not so fast, I said. I pulled one of the flash drives out of my pocket and tapped it on the table. Sit down, Winnie, I barked. Finish your drink. Order more. We have more to talk about, and you still have something to lose. Go ahead, tell that to my boss, he laughed, his voice high and hollow. Hell, you can give this to Marty. She won't leave me. Maybe yes, maybe not. Maybe she'll want to talk to Danielle. Of course, she no longer bears that name. I stared at him hard. Your parents really put the fear of God into her. Winnie sank into a chair. You have 10 minutes, he muttered. He loosened his tie and undid the top button, his collar was wet. Stop talking nonsense, Winnie. I have as much time as I want because you have something to lose, just like me. I caught his eye, and he looked away again, faster this time. Don't shut me up, buddy. We've only just begun. Watching him breathe, almost crying, I thought about Ash for a second and wondered if she felt the same way when she began one of her revenges. I understand how you can become addicted to this. I took another breath. Let's move on to the second part. Funny you should mention your job, Vinny. You're right, Mary and Danielle won't get you fired. Hell, you won't even get fired because of Ashley, although that would be hard for her. Unlike you, she needs her job, and also unlike you, she is not untouchable. If your little afternoon delight comes out, it will destroy her. You, of course, will remain free. I chuckled. Hell, if you don't rob a bank, you'll probably end up at Pearson Bateman until they carry you out on a stretcher. What are you talking about? He crossed his arms. I think he was trying to look stern, but from where I sat, it looked like he was trying to cover up his soft underbelly. Don't you know? I drank my gin and tonic. Don't you remember Goldfarb's score? So what? You lost $500,000 because of a mistake that an intern could have noticed. Have you ever wondered why you weren't fired? The courageous face crumbled into dust. It wasn't my fault, secretary. I shook my head. Yes, the secretary took the blame upon herself. You'll be glad to know that she received a reward for this and an excellent recommendation. She now works at Babbitt and Gallum. She seems happy too. Okay, Chucky, he roared. If you know so much, tell me why didn't I get fired? Does he really not know? I studied his face. Isn't it obvious, Vinny? Who's always looking out for you, always saves your 5th place. I saw that understanding had descended on him. That's it. Do you understand? I saw another small piece break off from Winslow Hubble. No, they don't. Would it surprise you to learn that a week after the gold mess, your parents transferred $30 million into their account at Pearson Bateman? He looked at me with dawning horror. And that's in addition to the $150 million they already have there, I said, stuttering. No, they never. They are the ones who pay your salary, Vinny. Between brokerage and transaction fees, commissions, profit sharing, and a bunch of other odds and ends, I bet your parents are actually paying Pearson Bateman a little more just to keep you around. I work with some of the firm's largest clients. I laughed. He really doesn't know, Winnie. Come on, you're shuffling paperwork around the firm's biggest accounts, and I'm willing to bet they have someone keeping an eye on you to make sure you don't screw up too badly. In fact, you're Pearson Bateman's highest paid intern. Hell, most of the secretaries there do riskier jobs than you. I'm the vice president, he said, his voice racing. Your wife obeys me, I spoke quietly, as if to a child or a wounded animal. You will be vice president as long as your parents invest their money in Pearson Bateman. Hell, if they invest enough, you could even work your way up to SVP or COO, but you'll never be more than a glorified paper deliverer. I took a sip of my drink. As for Ash, I'm willing to bet that her submission to you mostly involves sending a few of her emails from you to someone who has some real power. He gave me an uncertain grin. I had enough power to seduce your wife, Kay. That's it. This is the arrogance I've been waiting for, I beamed, looking at him. This seemed to upset him. Now we come to the main thing. Are you ready, Winslow? Yes, you, expletive. My wife, in my own bed. And how many times was that? 4, 5, 6. And then I put the hammer down. How many times has this happened since then? Winslow's face fell as I continued. It's been 1.5 years, Winnie. How many times did my ex, who was so fascinated by you, take you to her bed again? I'll simplify it. How many times did she kiss you, dance with you, send you an SMS full of sweet words? It was after the divorce. She said that she didn't want to do anything to muddy the waters. You can't be that stupid, Winnie. We've been divorced for 1 year and in separation 1.5. I laughed at him. Besides, everything is crystal clear. Once I moved out, you could have a night with her every night and twice on Saturdays. The only reason you're not together right now is because she doesn't really want your fat flesh touching her, you cuckold. He shouted. She liked what I did to her. I was a hell of a lot better than you. I leaned back in my chair. You know, when I was watching you, I noticed something funny, Winnie. You seem to talk a lot about me, he blinked. What? Watch the video. It's amazing how much of your conversations concern me, the size of my man's tool, how much more yours is than mine, how much better are you at night compared to me, what are you? He was breathing heavily. Better than her, little cuckold boy, he tried to give me a triumphant smile. He failed. I laughed. Here it is, cucked boy. You often said this in the video too. See, here's the thing. When most men find themselves with a beautiful woman, They can't stop talking about her, about how beautiful her breasts are, what a gorgeous face she has. Well, you understand. But as soon as you're in the room with Ashley, you start talking about me, what I am, a winner. I shook my head. God, no wonder you were forced to work as an intern. Let me explain everything to you briefly. Ashley is a beautiful woman. That's it. What you can speak about me, tool. No, stop it. I don't, what? Me? Long, so thick, stop it. His face was burning. How, I touch her? How do you have an intim compared to me? How do you, now, take what once was mine? Shut up, stop it. Stop immediately, he shouted. Don't you think it's strange, Winnie? That's exactly what I think. He covered his ears with his hands. Stop calling me Winnie, you worthless cuck. He looked like he had run a marathon. He was choking, and there was a wheezing sound in his breathing, as if he was on the verge of tears. He lay curled up in a ball, eyes closed, hands still covering his ears. I glanced at the waitress. She was talking to a man in a suit, I think with the manager. I motioned for the bill. I don't, he make a sound. I'm silent, Vinny. I'm just telling you what I saw, what you will see when you watch this video. I looked at him, he was broken. Nothing special, Winnie. It's like loving blondes or big women. Accept it and move on. I'm not like that, he wailed. I don't judge. Winnie, at least not for this. I finished my drink and put the glass down. And as for the rest, a child without a father, ruined lives, broken marriages, an imaginary toy job financed by mom and dad, yes, I really blame you for that. His face seemed swollen, red, and sweaty, his tie was a mess, the eyes were pleading. What about the video? You're not going to give it to Marty, are you? I burst out laughing. Winnie, Marty has had the video for a year now. I gave her a copy as soon as the divorce was finalized. This copy is yours. I handed him the flash drive across the table. What? But she didn't say anything. Not a word. Winnie, I wouldn't want to speculate about why Marty stayed with you or, for that matter, why did she even get together with you? I don't know what kind of devilish deal she made to get her 5th place out of Pittsburgh, and I'm not going to blame her. I pulled out a second flash drive from my pocket. As for why she stayed with you, maybe it's devotion, love, or maybe because your prenup gives her $500,000 if she stays married to you for 5 years. Your 5-year wedding anniversary was what, 2 weeks ago? 3, he answered absently. Yes, I don't always remember dates well. Congratulations and many more happy years to come. But before I go, this is for you. I slid the second flash drive across the table to him. This is a video that I shot. Let's call it Chucky and Mrs. X. You can't see her face, and we've blurred out any distinctive features, but I think you'll recognize her voice. I paused and picked up my backpack. Or maybe not. She often makes sounds and screams. It's funny, though. The video is 2 hours long, and I'm pretty sure I didn't mention you once. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. What do you think of our story today? I thought the story was quite interesting and exciting, especially the moment where he finally confronted his abuser and set things straight. What was your impression of the story? Write in the comments. Until new videos.